focus and spotlight best practices, remind everyone that the customer is the reason why businesses exist. Joining me in the studio this afternoon to have a conversation about customer service is the queen of customer service training, Mrs. Margaret Echimaika of Nest of Ideas Consultancy. They operate a customer service training school, and you've heard her many times on the Cosmopolitan Mix. So today we decided that we should have a conversation. We should have a real interesting conversation about customer service. Quite often we think that it should be a function of some department. Should it be? We're going to learn more, and that will be coming your way in the next 10 seconds. And it's exactly 15 minutes past 1. And this is the Executive Lounge on your super station Joy 99.7 FM. Mrs. Margaret Echimaika, welcome to the Executive Lounge.
Thank you, Inshura. I'm really honored to be here.
It's a pleasure and a privilege to get to hang with you and glean more of your experience and the lessons that you have to share with us. I've always wondered why customer service is important. I mean, I need to buy water, I would go and buy it, but why should I be worried as the producer or the supplier of the water that I have to be nice to the person who's buying the water?
Because if you really want to, if it's water that you're selling and you want people to come back again, then the way you deliver the water is important. Right. In fact, I share a story where I was taking a back road in the, I think, West Legon neighborhood, and I saw an older lady selling sachet water, pure rubber as we call it, and she actually handed it over to the person buying on a tray.
Wow.
Most of the time they will point it at it and say, pick it up and drop the money. You know, it's even given the impression that it's not important. But she hands it over in a tray. I said, wow.
That's
I noticed these
pure
things.
water with silver service.
Exactly. And then I come across a Forex bureau. Forex bureaus, they either change money or you buy or sell your foreign currency. And you go into a Forex bureau and they actually give you a bottle of water, cold water, after the service. So people distinguish themselves by the way they deliver their products across or to their customers. And if you really want to make a difference, service, we say, is unique to an individual, to an organization, but products can be copied. You are not the only one selling water, and so it's the person who hands it over to the customer who makes a difference. And I see that there's some change. You buy water from someone, you can see this is the actual business owner. They actually carry the water into your car and they say thank you. Whilst others still don't get it. They don't get it because they just, I mean, if you want it, this is the price, just take it or leave it. So that's a distinction. And your competitor can slash you down or move you out of business just by improving their service by a little notch. The little notch, I could say, you can call it 1 degree, 1% or whatever. They say water boils at 100 degrees Celsius or 200 and something. But when you improve it by 1, it makes a difference. It makes a difference to the bottom line. And if anybody doesn't believe what we're saying, I would say try it. Even as employees, you are always more interested with those who are enthusiastic, willing to go the extra mile. So service is in every area of our lives. In the home, you can be given a meal grudgingly, and you can be given a meal with an extra smile or service or willingness. And so I think that if we understand service as a part of life, it doesn't become a chore. It doesn't become a title. It doesn't become somebody's job, so to speak. It is everybody's business. And yesterday I was sharing on Doreen's show something that I read from my friend's office. He's called Victor. He says that the customer is the most important person in our business. And everybody says the same thing. But he says anyone whose job does not affect or influence the customer, their job should be, and I said ... which means filling the blanks. Their job should be scrapped. Somebody would say I'm executive, or I am in the back office or back end of the business, and therefore I don't have a customer. But your customer is your internal customer. The way you deliver to them will affect the output. We have all these equipment here. If it wasn't rightly put, we could be messed up. So the service behind the scenes are as important as the service that the customer sees. And it's amazing, Inshira, to see that companies who we don't see to be, shall I say, the forefront of the well-known stuff are paying attention. They're training their service providers, ensuring that they understand what the service business is all about. I once read about a Mercedes-Benz CEO in Europe, and he was saying that, yes, we know our cars are not cheap, but before we can sell to the next person, it's the way we interact with the customer. The feeling, they call it customer experience, but the feeling they get when they are buying a Mercedes-Benz should not make them feel that, well, you just throw your money away or just go on with it, because it must feel that it's a special experience. And that experience will only come when the service providers have experienced the car. It's not a mechanical thing just to say that press this and this will happen, but it's an experience to say that when you touch this, it makes it easier for you to drive, you are more comfortable, and so on. It's not about cars. It's about how you make the recipient of your service feel.
So at the core of what we have called customer service, customer engagement, is actually relationships and how people feel about what they're doing or buying.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned, the back office, and quite often organizations tend to have this, split between your front line staff and then your back office people. For the lack of a better description, the banks have people who never come into the banking hall, but they all together contribute to ensuring that your banking transactions are handled. Yes. How important is it to give a service culture orientation to the front office people as much as the back office staff?
In fact, if you do it for only one group, you've missed the point.
Why?
Because it's everybody's business.
But I don't meet the customers. I only receive a check. I make sure I tally that, okay, so they have this amount of money, it's going there. I fill in the blanks and then stamp it as complete.
Because the person in the front line can smile as much as they can. And if they tell the customer that you get it in 2 minutes, and it takes 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it is, it means that they have not been able to deliver on the promise. So the back end is as important as the front end. And the people in the back end, whether you call it operations or whatever name you give it, must know that their actions or inactions actually affect the customer and the output. Sometimes we have promises. We say, oh, we will turn around in 10 minutes, whatever your promise is, 2 minutes, 3 seconds. I heard you say, we're going to go on air in 10 seconds. That's a promise. Now, if that promise is to happen, other things have got to occur. Assuming that on the 9th second, everything fell apart, you're messed up. So if we put the orientation only on the front end, they can only do so much. And sometimes their frustrations with their back end operations and so on they vent out on the customer.
Let me. I get the explanation. It makes perfect sense. But I still would like to ask, why then is there a need for a customer service department? If it is everyone's responsibility to make the customer happy, why set aside a department to just do that?
I think that the department usually, shall I say, they guide everybody, because we have specialization in organizations. Somebody's specialized in finance, somebody's specialized in IT, and so on. And so sometimes they lose track of the journey. So the customer service department, or whatever you like to call it, I call it service excellence, their aim is to direct everyone to the chosen goal. If we want to be outstanding, there are certain things we must do. So the customer service unit will remind you of what it is that you require to be outstanding. Provide measures, provide standards that can help you get there. And ideally, the person who wears the hat of the business, the CEO, the chief, whatever you call them, chief leader, should champion this. So the service unit becomes a support to get to the goal. Unfortunately, you find that most companies would have the service promise or strategy, whatever they call it, on the walls, nicely blown out,
framed and hang on in some prominent spot,
and that's where it ends. We want to move it to everyone in the organization. So the conversation should be, how does my role affect service to the external customer? And what can I do to improve in that service? So the customer service unit is help you to understand, because we assume a lot of the time that customer service is common sense. It should be, but it's not. Why does somebody have to be taught how to greet? But there are some people who don't greet anybody. It doesn't matter what time of the day. And so we are saying that if you have a customer, you must greet them. So the service department is going to remind everybody that whether you are in the back or the front, we must greet our customers. And if you go to an organization that people are not expecting or don't know who you are, you'll be amazed the number of people who will pass by without saying hello. Is somebody looking after you? Because they don't think it's their job. The receptionist should be asking you hello, and what can we do for you? But if we make it everybody's business, what it means is that we have something we call the 10-foot rule. Within 10 feet radius, if anybody you see, a hello or a greeting is appropriate. Without that, you say, I'm just going into my office and it's okay to just pass by anybody. Perhaps you hadn't met me before and you were going to interview me, and I'm sitting outside and you passed by me only to find out that, oh, this is the lady I was going to interview. So it's important that we all understand that we're in the same boat. I say that your service delivery is as strong as your weakest link. Your service delivery is as strong as your weakest link.
Because that could undo everything that you've ever worked at.
Exactly. And so you want to make sure that the linkages between the departments and the functions are strong. Receiving and giving feedback, improving on what has been set out. In our sessions, we usually would have our training sessions, we would have interactions between groups from various functions. And they are usually amazed about information they get from other people. You know, you're working closely together, but you've never asked for feedback. But if you do, they would say that, you know, if my show is going to be 15 minutes to whatever, after the hour, do X, Y, Z before that. Then there's consistency. It shouldn't be only measured when it's Doreen or it's Inshira or somebody. It must be consistent, and that becomes your standard for your organization.
Wow. It's 29 minutes past 1. This is the Executive Lounge, and my guest is Mrs. Margaret Echemaika. She is the CEO of Nest of Ideas Consultancy. They focus on ensuring that businesses delivering on their promise and giving service excellence. They have a customer service training school. Now, you talked about some very interesting stuff, and I'd like us to put that in the context of this new world where we're buying things online and we're not necessarily interfacing with someone. You know, there's a transport service that you can use off your phone, and if you ever need to talk to customer service, you have to send an email, so you're not really interacting with people. What is the difference in terms of the strategy or the key principles in ensuring customers are happy when the service does not have a face-to-face component?
What we say is that for every point of contact that the customer has with an organization, the experience should be good, excellent. In other words, the face-to-face has its requirements, but if you have an app, and there are occasions where the apps don't work, that's the experience that has been shattered. If it's a service that requires that you, it says, for example, that from one destination to another, this is the charge. But then the app gives you double the cost. That service failed. When it has to be redeemed, that email you send, that message you send, goes to a human being, because the human being has got to fix it. And they would often ask you that, why did you not use that service? Can you give the reasons, 1, 2, 3? And you could say that the cost was too high. And if the cost was too high, the app can't correct it. Somebody's got to put something in and say that from Kokomlimle to Circle cannot be 200 Ghana cedis. There must be an error and has to be corrected. So all I'm saying is that every touch point is important. Whether you're using apps, whether you are having face-to-face contact, whether you're using telephone, chat, and it must be up to it. Sometimes we switch on different things and we're not able to follow through. Somebody has a chat service, I have a chat service, but I can't manage it. There's no point. Somebody has an app. I have an app which never works. There's no point. And somebody would say that we have a telephone number to hotline and it never gets picked up. So you find that we say that every contact point is important.
Does customer service in a macro space, so government agencies, quite often you go into an institution and the first thing the customer, the first person you speak to is the receptionist. And I always cringed when I heard that statement, or the question is, what is your problem? The first thing you get asked is, what is your problem? Should there be a marked difference in how customer service or service excellence is delivered in the public space compared to the private sector?
I don't think there should be a marked difference. It's all important. The only thing is that in the government or the public sector, people don't see the direct correlation to the profit. And so they feel a little aloof. But the best of them often know that. I did some work with the Department of Child Health when Dr. Welbeck was the head. And every single person, from consultants through to the ward orderlies and so on, were involved. It was just a mindset change. Let us focus on the customer and ensure that we all understand. Because some of them said, honestly, if a mother's baby wets the floor, which I've just cleaned, I'm mad. And therefore, I'm going to say something to the mother and say, Mommy, you should take care of your child, move him or her, to another place. Forgetting that if there was another facility, they have an option. And even if there wasn't, as of today, in a few years to come, there would be an option and they will not come to your facility.
Right.
And if they don't come to your facility, you won't have a job because you will not be needed. So even if they don't see it in financial terms, they should know that their jobs are dependent on customers. So what is your problem? Needs to be corrected. How may I serve you? And it seems like a far cry. We've said, how may I help you? But how may I serve you? Because that's what you are there for, to serve. But and I would say that it's choice of words, because some words have a negative connotation. The moment you say, what's your problem?
Like, I don't have a problem.
Yes, I don't have a problem. I'm here to see your boss.
Yeah.
Or I'm here to, transact some business with you. So how may I serve you? Then I will tell you why I'm here. And that's why people need training. Because some words we have used all the time seem okay to us. But problem in any circumstance connotes that something is not right, something is wrong, or something needs a desired.
And just maybe this person who's walked through the door is actually coming to give a commendation for some good service they've received.
Yes. So
and this is how you greet them. What's your problem?
What's your problem?
Oh, the other one is, yes, you have a problem. No, I don't. But it's great. You say that there has to be a deliberate effort to craft an expected outcome and live by a code that makes it achievable. One of the things I read about Jeff Bezos of Amazon is that he often insists on an empty seat in the office, in the meetings. And that seat is supposed to represent the voice of the customer. And that we're doing all we do because of this faceless person, this person we don't know and may never meet. But there's a reason why we do what we do. What would you say are the key steps that organizations or the principles that you ought to put in place to ensure that, one, you've clearly defined what your customer service goals are, and two, that you've created a culture where people live it and it becomes a way of life to please the customer and not really worry about just going after the numbers?
Number one, I would say you should have a vision. Some people will call it a strategy. You've got to have a destination. How do you want your customers to perceive you? And when you say how do you want your customers to perceive you, it means that people you said we provide excellent service, we think the customer is number one, and so many other things.
Yeah.
If that is what you want to be perceived as, then you've got to take steps to get there. And the issue usually is not so much how to get there. I would say that the leadership must walk the talk. We say the leadership must walk the talk. The reason why I said must walk the talk, if you say that the customer is important to us and a customer calls you as a leader and you say, oh, there goes that troublesome customer again, you've negated all your efforts. Because you are telling your team that some customers are troublesome and do not need your attention or do not deserve it. So what it means then is that you must have a vision. What we want to be seen as our business, as an individual, whether you're selling sachet water or boxes of it or you're running financial service business. That's number one. I now believe also that systems and processes are key. Because if you want to deliver excellent service, when I talk about systems, I always say I'm not really talking about the technology aspect of it. I'm talking about the way we do things. If I require to buy a box of water from a shop or something, I don't want to have to beg them, oh, please, can I have some of your water? I want it to be easily accessible. I want to be able to pick it up as many as I can. And if it's heavy, I would like somebody to help me. Just putting it as a scenario. When that is done, then the next step is that if we say that you can pick up water, you can pick up an item from a supermarket or whatever in 3 minutes or 5 minutes. That is us. That's what we are saying. Is that possible? Can we achieve it? And I see continually, especially those in the retail space, that they are technically neck to neck with each other. What is it after your branding that is going to let people walk in and buy from you? I went into a shop that was newly opened, and I saw clearly marked that an item had been reduced. It was Milo. When I got to the service provider to pay for the goods, she said, oh, sorry, that was the promotion time. The price is still the old price. That's an experience gone wrong. I didn't buy the product. But if somebody was empowered to say, it's true, the promotion ended yesterday, we should have pulled it off. At least I can get my supervisor to authorize this one item and we'll correct that mistake. Or a simple apology, would have done the trick. So what am I saying? Have a vision. Make sure your systems and processes work. And because you have multiple people doing the same thing, especially when you have multiple locations, it's difficult to monitor them as an individual. So you want to make sure that you have standards. And how would you know whether the standards have been adhered to? You've got to measure it. And measuring standards doesn't always have to be a hard thing to do. It's just based on, how many times do we meet our own standards? There was a pizza place in Accra, in fact in Osu, they're not there anymore. They used to say simply, get a pizza in 9 minutes or get it for free. That is a standard which is being enforced. And who is going to help you do that? The customer. As soon as I sit down, I start looking at my watch. And I realized, I think it was 12 minutes, but I realized that they had tested the system and they knew they could deliver it in 9 minutes. In fact, if you get it in 12 minutes, it's usually overcooked. So have a way of measuring it, and it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be something, if you're getting a lot of people getting it for free, it tells you that your standard has fallen through. You're not able to meet your own promised standard.
Well, it's 42 minutes past 1. This is the Executive Lounge on your Superstation Joy 99.7 FM. And we're discussing customer service or service excellence in the 21st century. And one of the three key things we've learned so far in setting up or developing your own service culture is that you must have a vision. And that vision should not be hang on a wall, where people just read it and walk past it, but it has to be lived, and it has to start with the orga or the orgas at the top to ensure that it filters through the entire organization. There has to be systems and processes, and that you don't make promises until you know that you can keep them, and you ensure that you have the systems to back that promise, to ensure that consistently you're delivering on those. Yes. And the third thing is also that you must have standards, and that standard has to be measuring your service promise against customer satisfaction. And if there's a gap, then it means that you have some more work to do. You can join us with your own thoughts on 0244340437. That's the WhatsApp line. If you have any questions for Mrs. Margaret H. Maika of Nest of Ideas Consultancy. And let's, take your own thoughts. I like to get to know my guests and also help our listeners to also get to know our guests. So I usually would have done that before, but I want to do this towards the tail end.
Okay.
Let's learn a little about you. Did you always want to do service excellence training and customer service?
It's an interesting question. I never really started out that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I was privileged to be a management trainee many years ago. I don't want to tell you how many years ago that was. And the essence then was to have an idea of every area
Mm-hmm.
of financial services. And along the line in my training, I was a branch manager. In those days, in Shira, you'd be surprised, but many women did not occupy those positions. There was a ceiling. And so, to be a branch manager, you are in charge of the whole branch,
Mm-hmm.
the aura, everything that concerns it. The journey had started before then, but I think that's when it was really tested,
Mm-hmm.
because I realized that if we wanted to distinguish ourselves as a branch against other branches in the same organization, service was the key differentiator, because we had the same product, we had the same service,
Mm-hmm.
and we had the same people. So something had to differentiate. And since then, since 1997, I've been on a journey of differentiation with service. Because I believe that products can be copied. Even if they're not copied well, they can be copied. But the way you interact with your customers can never be copied. There won't be another insurer and there won't be another Margaret. That does not mean that we are but we're saying that the way we interact with people is different.
Mm-hmm.
So you learn to improve your communication with your customers, internal and external. And so that's where the journey started. I can get carried away about those days. But
You said in the financial services sector?
yes, and my customers, when I was leaving that branch, said that if your bank thought that we all came to this bank because of their advertising, which actually there wasn't much of.
Mm-hmm.
He said it's because of the personal PR of Margaret.
Wow.
Yes. I went out there. Now, sales is a common thing, but it was a unique thing in 1997 to go out and get customers. I remember going to a big client who was multi-banked, and this person, I didn't even have a brochure. I had a faded photocopy of interest rates and something like that. So that did not do the trick. I told them about my organization, what they did, and what we could offer. And I said, I know you're multi-banked, but we're happy to even have what I call a small change.
Mm-hmm.
I walked out of that office with 2 accounts.
Wow.
Yes. So I believe that service has always been the bedrock of any organization. It's just that because of things that we've learned, it's easy to know the sales numbers.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to know the actual financial performance. It's easy to measure those, but service has not been measured. And whilst I was playing that role, I was an ATM custodian.
Wow.
And I made it a point with my team to ensure that our ATM worked. And there were only 3 ATMs. On a holiday, the MD of the company went to ATM 1, ATM 2, and mine was the last one, which was furthest away. Not only was it working, but I was there making sure that the cash was available. He said, wow, we need someone like this in the central office to champion this whole idea. They didn't have a write-up about what their role should do, but they said, we want to replicate this thing, understanding that the customer is the center of all that we do. A customer then, there are many things customers have said to me in the past,
Mm-hmm.
but one customer said, as I walked around the banking hall and said, how may I serve you today? He said, wow, A manager coming out of their office to ask me,
You know?
it's like going to McDonald's and the manager asking you what you would like for the day.
Mm-hmm.
So those things gave me a different interest in customers. Hitherto, about 10 years before, I had an award during a mystery shopping thing. It wasn't common, but they did have mystery shopping.
Wow.
And they said that this young lady looks very enthusiastic about her work. I didn't call it customer service, but I just knew that whoever was standing there needed to be served and served quickly. And so it's become a way of life.
Mm.
And I call it a calling. Because if you work in a bank, working in customer service in any role is not the most lucrative. And I was privileged to have all the skills in credit, in foreign exchange, all that, because I was part of the training.
Mm-hmm.
But there was something that had to link all those things. And that was the service to the internal and external customer.
Very interesting story. Customer service has a way, or when you're delivering service excellence, it has a way of creating relationships that transcend the commercial relationship that you have with customers.
Exactly.
If I just may ask for clarity, was this your time at Barclays Bank?
It was.
Okay.
And I know you're going to...
No, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I don't know if you've ever met my wife, but she speaks fondly of you, and I have never forgotten. This was probably about 12 years ago.
Okay.
And there was an issue with, she was just a very unhappy customer, and somebody had spoken to her and aggravated her further. And I think the conversation was escalated to your desk.
Yes.
I will never forget how you handled this. And I think that the important thing is how can people who are short-tempered or short people like me, who may not have the skill or have made customers, how do we become like you? What are the temperaments we need to cultivate to be able to handle people and serve them and make them happy?
Number one is, first of all, if you don't see the people as important, irrespective of their bank balance or their income to the company, but you find that everybody is important, that's number one. Number two, we must all agree that the best of us are not always in our best natures. You get into bad moods, you have a bad day, you have a flat tire, you get into the wrong taxi, and so you understand that you have that. But the key thing is that don't carry your baggage to your desk.
Mm-hmm.
And I had people who would call me after 5, at 7, and still get the same consistent response. And I tell my participants that service is the stage. If you get on the stage, you've got to act the part.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot say that because I had a bad day, I didn't sleep well, everybody who comes within my radius is going to get it. So people have got to have a mindset and attitudinal change. Be conscious of the people you're dealing with, because you don't, like you said, you don't know whether I've met your wife. I don't even know, because I dealt with countless people that I didn't leave. And several years, over 8 years down the line, I still get calls from customers. You know, a customer who says to me, Margaret, I know you're not there, but I just want to tell somebody my story.
Wow.
Yes. So then it means that somebody's got to focus on the customer's needs and provide solutions. And I remember one, shall I say, potentially big account. This person managed, I don't want to mention the name of the company, but a big company, and he had a very important role. He had been messed up big time. He had a card. The card didn't work when he got to the UK. And he was away for a week and therefore couldn't pay his bills.
Wow.
That is what we say, you've messed up big time. how do you find a solution to that? The damage has been done.
Mm-hmm.
But the way you talk to the customer, the solution you provide, what would you like? He says, I would like the taxi that I took in the UK paid for. You got it. I would like some money for my inconvenience. You've got it. The finance people will not be happy with you, but keeping that customer is so valuable. I give this example because it turned out, at the time I was dealing with this, I didn't know he was a big multinational, shall I say, kingpin.
Mm-hmm.
And not only did he keep his account, he brought his family. And then it meant that the multinational company's business remained. So if you want to talk about how to look after customers, you should know, even if you haven't got the figures, that it actually impacts on the bottom line. A lot of people forget. I mean, in my dealings with people, recruiting and so on,
Yeah.
some people take the job because of the money. I don't think that if it was because of the money, I would have lasted that long, especially in that role, because I understood that it was a call. When I say it's a call, it means that whether you are inconvenienced, sometimes you tell your family that this ATM must be full, and until I'm done that, I'm not going to go off to Akosumbu and have my customers waiting. So people have to be willing, I would say willing.
Mm-hmm.
Accept that they have weaknesses, that you are impatient. You don't care about people who don't look like you. Sometimes people are like that.
Yeah.
But when you accept that, then you say, look, I've got to make a change. I've got to learn to be more friendly to people who don't know me. I've got to be willing to solve their problems when they come up. And that's why sometimes companies say, let's have a central place for handling these things. But that does not mean others should abdicate. You only go there for support. You go there for some kind of balance,
Mm-hmm.
when you have a tricky situation.
Yeah.
And that is what is missing, I would say.
Wonderful. Well, it's always the most difficult part of my Tuesday afternoon. It's 4 minutes to the top of the hour. And this is where we say a big thank you and bring the close to our conversation. I wish we could carry on, but thank you so much, Mrs. Margaret H. Micah, Nest of Ideas Consultancy. The news is up in a moment with Mr. Menu, who's walked into the studio. But here are my 5 takeouts from our conversation. The first one is that you should go with the flow, but you should develop a desire to be significant along the way. And also, you should work at constantly improving on yourself. And number 3 is that you should set new standards wherever you find yourself. And number 4, that life is a calling. And whatever you do must be in fulfillment of that calling. And finally, live to leave a mark.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Tichmaika, and we look forward to another dose of your wisdom and experience on customer service. It's just been awesome to have had you on the show.
Thank you very much.
God bless you. The news is up next, but before then, I will leave you with Abena. This is one of Kim Promise's song. If I'm right, Tuesday is Banada, isn't it? So this is dedicated to all Tuesday borns. Stay tuned. The news will be on. And then Lexis Bill will bring you the best late afternoon radio.